Hello everybody, so in today's video I'm going to show you how to make one of these. And you're going to be able to build that jacket that you just saw with this pattern right here. This is one of the most simple jackets that you could physically create, and I'm going to take you through the whole process today. You are able to use a domestic sewing machine or an industrial sewing machine, it doesn't matter. So when you head onto the website, download the jacket pattern, you can come back here, you basically need to stick all the pages together, cut the desired size out, and then you should have something that looks a little bit like this. I don't film a how-to on that process because there is a tutorial on my website which shows you how to stick all the pages together. You don't need me to show you in this. And then once you've cut your desired size out, the tutorial resumes right now. So once you get this pattern, there is going to be a page which says tools, materials and hardware. For this tutorial, you're going to need fabric markers or chalk, you're going to need fabric scissors obviously, a tape measure, an iron, a sewing machine, domestic or industrial as I mentioned, and then for hardware, you're going to need a reversible zip because this jacket is going to be reversible. You're going to need 60 inches of elastic that goes around the cuffs of the jacket, which is the wrists, and it's also going to go around the waist. It's going to cinch this jacket in and make it super boxy and have a really nice fit. This is 1 inch wide. You can find this stuff at any sort of fabric shop or you can buy it on eBay. So 60 by 1 inch. And then for your main fabric, I'm using 2 meters of some printed fabric that I got specially printed. And then I have 2 meters of a lining fabric too. I would recommend, this is kind of like a Harrington jacket. So you're most probably gonna want lighter fabric. So between 200 and 300 GSM, some like light cotton. You can use denim, you can use heavier fabrics, but the problem is with this is that when you have that final fit of the jacket, it can look quite, the cinching won't sit perfectly, whereas if you have lighter fabric, everything should flow really nicely. Now within this tutorial, I'm going to put 2 welted pockets on each side of the front panels. And when I finish the jacket, you'll see I'll be able to put my hands in these pockets. I'm gonna add 2 onto the front outer fabric and 2 onto the inner lining because this is a reversible jacket. If you are interested in learning how to do one of these welted pockets, I will not be showing you in this video. So you can just go and head to this video right here. When you get to that stage, I will let you know. Then you can pretty much watch that, figure it out, then come straight back to this tutorial. Let's get into it. So you're at the stage where you've cut out all your pages, stuck them together. Or alternatively, you can go on my website and purchase the A0 packaged up, printed and shipped directly to your door patterns, so you can save all of the work of sticking and tiling all the A4/letter pages together. It's just for the people who don't want to do all that. But you essentially should be at a stage where you have something like this. And what I'm going to mention is on every single pattern piece, it says what the panel is. And then it also says cut 2 outer fabric mirrored. So you'd basically cut 2 outer fabrics mirrored. So the mirrored basically means if you have a texture on one side or a print on one side, then the other side of that fabric is most probably going to be raw. So you basically want to cut 2 pieces of fabric where the texture's facing each other, and then this will get your collar, you'll cut it out, and then you'll sew these together, turn them inside out, and this basically makes your collar. On other panels, like this front panel, cut 2 times outer fabric mirrored, cut 2 times lining fabric mirrored. You essentially have only got 1 of these panels, and this is to save A4 paper. So you just want to cut 1 out and then do the same with the other. I like to lay my lining fabric underneath my main fabric, and then you can cut them out together and then just do the same again. Basically follow the directions, cut your fabric out, and then we'll get to sewing. Also, one more thing to mention is that when you're cutting your seam allowances, none of these lines have seam allowance included. So you basically, if you're cutting XL, which is this final line here, final dotted line right here, then you just cut a little bit to the left of this line. I like to basically use the side of the sewing foot as a reference, and I always use my seam allowance as following the end of this sort of black bar right there. So yeah, essentially if you were cutting small, you'd just do the same thing where you add like a 1 centimeter seam allowance to the left, and I'm cutting XL, so I'm doing the exact same there. So I've just cut out all of the fabric, and before I go any further whatsoever, I'm going to take the 2 front bodice pieces and the 2 inside lining front bodice pieces, and I'm basically going to do the welted pockets in the position that I'm looking for, and then I'll be back to the tutorial. And again, if you don't know how to do a welted pocket, just go check out my tutorial on welted pockets, carry on with that part of the tutorial, finish the welted pockets, and then come back to this video. See you in a second. So I'm back now. It is darker outside, but essentially I've got the 2 front outer panels ready with the welted pockets. I've got the 2 inside lining panels, the front inside lining panels welted pocketed too. I've added these patches also on all of the different panels because this is going to be reversible, so I even added it to the inside panels too. So essentially, let's get to the tutorial. So for now, we're just going to move all of the inside lining panels to the side. We're not going to be using these right now, and we're going to focus on building the outer shell together. This jacket is super simple. It's just constructing the shell. If you've made my hooded jacket pattern, it's literally the exact same thing, but maybe the thing that's different is the cuffs and the waist and the collar. So we're going to construct the outer shell of the jacket now, and it is the exact same process for the lining. You're constructing that the exact same way, and then I'll show you how to attach it all. So this right here is my back panel, and basically the way we're going to start is we're going to grab one of the front panels, and we're just going to line up the 2 sections with front facing. So again, if you have texture on your fabric, this needs to be facing each other. We're going to line the sides up, and then we're going to move around afterwards to the shoulder. We're going to line that up as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a stitch all the way along this, and then we're going to do the exact same thing and run a stitch all the way along this, and then do the exact same for the other side. And what you can do to make this easier is you can throw pins in this to keep it in the right place. Now you should have something that looks like this all the way round, as we've done it with the other front piece too. So you've pinned all the front facing panels together, and now we're just going to stitch all across this line here. We're not going to stitch around there, and then we're going to stitch across this. We're not stitching down or any part of this, and then we're going to stitch across the other shoulder. Again, we're not going to stitch any part of this armhole, and then when you get down to this, stitch across, down again. So one more time, you're stitching up, across, across again, and then across again. You're missing out the armholes. Don't stitch them together, otherwise you will have messed the whole thing up, have to unpick it. So stitch them lines, and then we'll get to the next step. As you can see now, we have stitched all the way around the inside of the jacket. And the next step is basically we're flipping this outside in so it's the right way. And on your seams, you can see that they just don't look finished enough. And what we're going to do is we're basically going to do a top stitch. And top stitching might be incredibly complicated in your brain if you don't know what that is, and the word might be confusing. If you know how to top stitch, you're just top stitching all the edges down. If you don't, let me explain it to you. So right here we have a seam, and essentially this seam has been stitched together, and on the inside this bit's kind of flappy. If you pulled this hard enough, you'd see the stitches in that seam. To cover this up and to make this seam a little bit more structured, basically what we're going to do is we're going to fold this over, and then as you can see, if I flip this the right way, all of that excess flap has been moved to one side. So you can stitch down this, and then everything will be held together. So one thing to note, your front panel is here and your back panel is this long one next to you. You should be holding this up at your machine thinking, which direction should I lay this flap down for the top stitch? What I like to do is I let this flap fall facing the back, and then when I top stitch, it feels like the back panel is kind of facing inwards the front panel. So what you want to do is you want to lay that down so your flap is on that side, and you're just going to run a top stitch all the way down this. So I always use the side of the press foot as my reference, and I'm going to slowly stitch through this. When you get to a point that it feels creased or everything's caught up, just throw your hand underneath the fabric and just push that flap to behind. And you also want to watch out that your fabric doesn't come over like this and all just bunch over one side. You want to be pulling on each side. You can slowly stitch down this, and you'll see you're creating a top stitch. As you can see here, it's all moved to one side. These raw edges, they're just flapping about. So when you're sewing them down, you're also reinforcing that frayed edge with 2 stitches now. And this is what it should look like all the way around. You can see this is also bringing shape to the garment. You've just top stitched all of the seams, and I've turned it back the right way, and you can start to see that the jacket's kind of taking shape now, but obviously you need to add the arms, put the lining inside, do the waistband, do the cuffs, and add the collar in the end. So yeah, before we go any further, you want to do the exact same thing with your lining, and then we will move on to the arms. So as you can see, I've finished the lining and the outer shell, but I just wanted to mention the reason you are top stitching the lining as well as the outside fabric is because this is going to be a reversible jacket. I'm using a reversible zip. It will be exactly the same. I'm going to show you how to close this up so it's seamless. And this is also the reason why I didn't add any pockets or cargo pockets that come out 3D from the garment, because it will be uncomfortable when you wear with one side on the inside. So yeah, I'm going to keep this simple with the 2 welted pockets. The 2 welted pockets on each side. I've top stitched it down, I've top stitched this down, and now let's move on to the arms. So now we're on to the arms. You can see that we've got the 4 arm panels, we've got 2 outer shell and 2 inner shell here, and essentially below that we have these strips. I've made 2 examples of this. If you did cut and fold, this should be 1 piece. However, if you didn't cut and fold, this is going to be 2 pieces. And if it is in 2 pieces, all you can do is just stitch across that top line, or kind of flipping it across this top line here, and it will make the same shape as this. But the difference with doing it on fold and doing 2 sheets that you stitch together here, when you add that elastic in there, the seam is going to make a different shape for the wrists. I'm going to show you that close to the end. So if you do end up making another one, you'll be able to do it on fold. And I did the same thing for that long waist strip here. Instead of cutting 2, I cut it on fold, so then there's 2 of the same one just integrated as 1 piece. But essentially, you should have your collar and your long strip to one side. You should have 4 arm panels, and then you should have your wrist straps here. These are going to go together in a weird way later, so we're not going to focus on the wrist straps right now. We're going to focus on putting the arms together. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing we did with the front panels, where we're just going to fold this over so the front facings are together. We're going to stitch all the way down this wrist. Once that is done, we're going to top stitch this too, and we're going to do this the same with all 4 panels. So now we have the arms. I'm going to show you how to attach the cuff onto one of the arms. Then when we get to putting the whole garment together later, I'll show you how to connect it to the other cuff, ready for you to slide in your elastic. And I'm going to show you how to do it both ways with the cut and fold, or the 2 pieces you've got right there. So if you have a piece that looks like this, rather than cutting on the fold and folding, you can take this over to the sewing machine and you can stitch all the way down and then just hit a top stitch on it. And so what we're doing is we're just going to focus on the 2 outer arms here. We've got these 2 strips now, both the same. One of them you've just sewn together, the other one was cut on the fold. And essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to line this up. And the way we're going to do that, because we're going to stitch it to the inside of this, you basically want to line it up by just doing a half fold. And depending on all of your top stitching and everything like that, you should have a little bit of excess fabric here. when you've done the half fold. And what you want to do, you just want to stitch all the way down here and then cut off all of that excess fabric that'll be left off here. This will make it so your cuff fits perfectly when you sew it round. So now what you want to do is you want to turn your armhole inside out. So it looks a little bit something like that. I've put the seam in the middle here, and I'm just going to do the exact same with the cuff. So it should look something like this. But this time I'm going to turn the cuff inside out. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slot this cuff into the arm, just like that. So I'm going to meet up these two seams, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this all the way round so it sits flush with the two raw edges all the way around. So now we have both the sleeves with the cuff band attached. I cut one where there was two pieces I put together and sewn them together, and then this one is cut on the fold as I showed you just a minute ago. I would recommend cutting on the fold and doing that one. It sort of cleans things up a little bit, and when the elastic's in, the front of the cuff won't be so sort of straight and rigid, because now you've got two sort of stitch marks in here, so when the cuff's cinched in, it might look a little bit odd. But I'm actually just testing this a little bit myself, testing to see which one works best. I guess we'll see when we get to the elastic part. But now we have finished the arms, I'm going to show you how to attach the arms to the outer shell, and then we're going to do the exact same procedure to the lining. And then it's pretty much just putting it all together, adding elastic, doing the collar. We're getting there. So as you can see, I've just turned the front pieces and back piece inside out, this main sort of garment piece inside out. And what we're going to do is we're basically going to take this sleeve and we're going to feed it through the inside here. And then you can see that both the front facings of the texture or the fabric sort of meet up. Then we can sort of spin this round, grab the inside of the sleeve and the outside. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab some pins and we're going to connect that bottom seam. So the side seam of the jacket connects to the underneath seam of the sleeve. And remember the front facings. If you don't have both the fronts facing, and say you did this with the other side, then your sleeve is going to be sewn on the wrong way. So remember, if you have texture or print on your fabric, then remember they are both facing each other, your fronts are facing, and you're just going to throw a pin into there. And then we are just throwing pins in around the rest of the sleeve. And once that is done, you're essentially stitching all the way round and then doing the exact same for the other side. It's a lot of the same procedure with these jackets. If you did follow the hooded jacket tutorial, then you'll know that a lot of the sort of sewing the seams together, doing the top stitch, it is a lot of the same sort of thing.
Converging lines of evidence, exactly how old it is, something that's not just anecdotal. Like, I haven't really seen any. Right? Any one of those pieces of evidence isn't enough. They kind of point to the same time. Then you got to strum the cake.
So this looks so nice, and I don't know if you just saw me do it, but I also top stitched all of the arm down. This is a little bit more tricky, so take it slow, go round the machine methodically, just make sure you're doing everything correctly. Don't sew over another piece of the garment, just take it super slow. But this is turning out to be super nice with this print on the outside and the super nice black and grey on the inside, which is so nice, like that ashy colour on the inside, which it will feel really nice, And then also you've got this insane sort of print on the front, which again, this is reversible. So you can choose some really cool fabrics for both of these. A lot of the time I feel like I'm choosing some insane fabric for the outside, and then I'm not thinking about the lining as much as I would if it was reversible. So now it is reversible. I think we're going to create something insane. So the next thing we're going to focus on is right down here. As you can see, there's sort of this little bit on the edge that squares off. And in this section right here that runs all the way around the jacket, comes back to this section right here. This is going to be a separate piece of fabric, which is this right here. It's your long strip. In my case, I've got print on the front, but yeah, it's your long strip. And what we're going to do, front facings again, is we're going to stitch this to this, this to this, and then we're going to get onto adding this. So essentially this strip right now is going to run all the way down, and this is going to wrap around, so you're going to see parts of this on the inside lining jacket, and then you're going to see parts of this on the outer shell jacket too. And basically, as you can see, this is quite a big strip, and it's even the width is wider than the actual hole itself. What we're going to do is we are just going to match up the front facings with the longer side of all of the strap facing outwards, and then we are just going to flip it and sort of visually see that when that's connected it works. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch along that line there, and then we'll slowly just rotate it round and then sew it all the way down one side.
It could be caused by anything. Could have been done.
So I've just decided that that looks absolutely crap. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to curve off that edge for you, and then curve off the pattern too. So then when you go to stitch this, you won't have to curve around that annoying right angle. Hello everybody. So I essentially stopped what I was doing last night because it got super late. I just wanted to chill out, and we are going to resume what we were doing at the stage that we were at yesterday. Essentially, what there is to do now, you've just sewn that band onto the bottom of the jacket, ready for the insert of the elastic to be put into. I am going to top stitch down that bottom band, and then I'll get to showing you how to attach the sleeves, and then how to put the collar on, and then finish it up with all the elastic, and then finally put the zipper in, and then it'd be a finished product. So yeah, let's get to it. So you should have something that looks pretty decent now. I've actually folded the lining inside, so as you can see, if you've attached this bottom band to the jacket, then everything sort of fits from the bottom up. It should be, you have your outer piece, and then all the way over here you have your lining. So I've pretty much just folded that inside out, ran the inside lining sleeves down to the bottom of the arms, and this basically creates the shell of your jacket, which is essentially going to make sense to completing it, connecting up all the pieces. And yeah, this is basically your jacket now, without the collar, without the zip, without the arms attached, without the elastic. And basically what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to top stitch all the way along this, just sort of clean up this bottom edge. As I mentioned last night, I'm really not a fan of how that looks. I think it just looks completely messy. So yours should be a little bit different. The pattern should curve, which is super positive because you should just be able to follow it all the way around. And yeah, so we are going to top stitch all of the bottom, and then I'll show you how to do the arms. So now I've top stitched down that strip all the way through the bottom of the jacket. This is the outer fabric and this is the lining, but I just wanted to mention again, I'm super unhappy with how this looks, and this was kind of a fault in the pattern. Essentially what I've done to the pattern before I've released it to you guys is I've split these two sort of parts that come out of the front bodice pattern. I've split them up into two blocks. This will basically mean you can sew these together, and then you can basically sew these 2 blocks onto the strip, and then you sew the strip with the block onto each side. So the same as what you've done here, but instead of connecting these 2 panels up, this one right here and this one right here, and then putting the strip in, I've decided it's better to do 2 blocks or 1 block, connect it to your strip, and then basically connect the strip with the block to the 2 front body pieces. I hope that makes sense. This is normally how you do it. Let me show you an example. So basically here you can see that this is a separate block and this is a separate block to the 2 front panels. This connects to the lining on the inside, and then this ribbing would connect to the block, and then you connect these 2 to the front body piece. When I was building this in Clo 3D, it doesn't simulate certain patterns correctly. You would have a bunch of bunching if you sewn this 90-degree angle. Maybe I should have known. I am the pattern maker. It kind of simulated perfectly, so I didn't notice. But your pattern should look slightly different, but just keep in mind that you can basically miss that part of sewing them 2 pieces together, then putting that initial strip in if you follow basically what I just showed you. Very confusing stuff, but I hope it is made easier for you, because I made that mistake. I don't want to make that mistake again, so hopefully the pattern is all cleaned up and you're able to move past this stage. So I'm going to describe basically how to attach the arms now. We're working from this mat of this jacket laid out. This is your lining, this is your outer fabric, and basically you should have a seam that runs all the way down one side part of your jacket. This should connect your under seam of your sleeve all the way to your side seam of your lining, across that strip, and then the same thing with the outer fabric. What you want to do is you basically want to turn these arms inside out. So now what you're looking at is that seam that runs all the way under the arm, down that side panel out seam, down that side panel of the lining, and then down the underneath sleeve inseam of that one too. So basically what we're going to do is we're basically going to connect the cuffs together, and we're going to do the exact same process for the other side, but don't worry about that right now. So we're going to pull both the arms in right now, and when you pull them in, make sure that you're just pulling them straight in and there is no twists in the arm. If you end up pulling it in and then twisting the arm, when you actually go to turn this inside out, you're going to have a huge problem with the fact that you have a twisted piece of fabric. So make sure that this seam that runs all the way down stays straight. It does not rotate or twist at all. And now what we're going to do is, now we've got these cuffs facing each other right here, we're basically going to start connecting them up. And the way we're going to do that, so before we connect these cuffs, they should be lined up together, completely straight, no twists in the fabric. We're going to grab our elastic. Now with this elastic, it should be like 60 to 100 inches and then 1 inch wide. The reason this is 1 inch wide is because it should fit perfectly into the cuff once you have folded all the fabric over. So what we're going to do now, this might be a bit awkward, give or take, we're now going to cut a wrist circumference out of this elastic. And we're going to do this twice because obviously you have 2 cuffs. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to tack and sort of do a little stitch to connect these together, the same with both sides. So now, as I've mentioned, you've got these cuffs that connect up without any twists in the arms, and you're basically just going to stretch this elastic through one sleeve. You're basically going to stretch this elastic and you're just going to put it through the outer fabric sleeve, just like that. And it can sit up here for now. This is not relevant right this second. And what we're going to do is we're going to move these sleeves out. So a lot of the part of this next bit of the process is going to be turning things in and out. So really be careful when watching me and how I sort of do it. It's very hard to describe these sort of things because I'm very self-taught as a designer. I mean, I guess you can tell with the pattern not being perfect and me having to change it for you guys. But essentially, I'm now going to attach the cuffs and we're working off everything lining up, all of the inseams lining up. So this is how I'm going to do it now. So you've got both of these cuffs, you just move to the side, and underneath you can see both of the seams. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip the outer fabric, and you can see that if I slot it inside of this lining, you can see the front facings are going to be facing each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect up this bottom seam of the sleeves with a pin, and pins are your best friend when you're doing this, because if anything goes wrong or something starts spinning and something's messed up, then it won't go the way you want it to. But basically what you're doing is you're pinning this all around the circumference of the lining fabric. So now you should have something that looks a little bit like that. These are both front facings facing each other, and we're just going to run this round the sewing machine, but this is going to be quite awkward, so take it slow. So now you can see that this is actually all connected up perfectly, and you can check that it's not twisted by lining up your seams and checking everything's not twisted, and it doesn't look like it is. So now we're just going to bring this elastic back to the cuff, and we're just going to keep it there for now. And we're going to do the exact same procedure on the other cuff. So before you go any further, you have now just lined up all the elastic with the cuffs, and everything's sort of inside out at the moment, so it can seem a little bit daunting. But essentially, we're going to basically connect everything up, and how we're going to do that is we can just pick up the jacket from the collar and sort of just straighten it out. It doesn't matter which way you do this, but we're basically going to keep everything inside out. What we're going to do is we're going to connect up the two right angles running all along the zip seam and the collar. So we're basically going for the edge of the collar, and we're basically lining up with front facings. We're lining up the fabric, and then when I hold this up, you'll start to see that the jacket shape is taking back place. So as you can see, what we just did was connect up the arms, and they're inside out right now. Everything's inside out, but I've basically just laid out the jacket again with front facings facing upwards, so all of your arms are kind of on the inside. And basically I'm just going to fold this jacket over the waist, and you can see that it sort of connects up this collar. I'm basically grabbing the right angles that go from the collar to the zip seam, and I'm doing front facings and I'm connecting them up. Remember, the front facings matter. And I'm just going to throw a pin in this corner, and I'm also going to throw a pin in the other. And then if you sort of straighten this out a little bit, you'll see that this line perfectly matches. We're basically connecting the inside lining collar to the outside lining collar, but we don't have a collar at the moment, so the reason we are pinning this is solely just to get placement, get everything sort of in shape the way we sort of want it, and then we're going to work on the collar next. So now we should be left with something that looks a little bit like this, and obviously the arms are kind of inside out. You should have your elastic on your cuffs, and you can turn this the other way and it should look the exact same the other side. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to throw this to the side for now, and we're going to grab our collar piece. Now if you cut this out correctly, you should have two front facings facing each other. This is your collar. What we are going to do is we're going to sew this together. So I've just switched to POV, and this right here is your collar pattern. Essentially you've got both of these curved lines, top and bottom, and then you've got these smaller lines here. This is going to basically wrap around your neck and then create the collar. As you can see, that's kind of taking shape there. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave this raw edge because this will be cleaned up, and we're just going to stitch along. We're going to stitch up here until we get to the peak of that corner, and then we're going to stitch along this curved top edge, and we're going to stitch all the way down. This is basically going to create the shape and the seam for us to be able to turn the collar inside out, and then we should be able to top stitch it all the way around, and then we'll have a clean collar. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to grab that line that we just pinned, which is the collar line. And we're basically going to insert this collar and sandwich it between the two front facings. So then when we turn this inside out, you'll have a full collar. So what I'm going to do whilst sandwiching this collar in is when you get to the end, you should have some excess fabric. You basically just want to fold it in and drop a vertical pin just on the edge there. And as you can see, all of these seams should be pretty flush. So I just wanted to mention something that I just shown you me doing, but it's very hard to sort of like describe over a video. Essentially, you've got this collar right here that is now being sandwiched in the two front facings of the jacket, and you've pinned it all the way across and make sure it's even both sides. You can sort of readjust your pins as you go along to make sure that there's no bunching up fabric along the way. And basically towards the end, I have added a vertical pin and done a 1/2 inch fold on both sides. This is so when we turn the jacket inside out, it will naturally start flowing a fold all the way down that zip seam, because this is the zip seam right here. And again on the other side, this is the other side of the zip, and it's naturally flowing this fold right there. You're just adding a vertical pin, and when you're sewing over that, going all the way along and then sewing over this. And to make it more structured, you can back and forth stitch when you get to this sort of area here. So now you've sewn that, you can essentially take out the pins, make sure you take out the vertical ones too, and you can basically turn this inside out from the zip line. So we're basically turning this whole jacket inside out. And what you can do is you can pull the arms from the middle, so they're normal as well, inside out to outside in. So now we can sort of see this jacket is really taking place. We can see the collar is now attached. We can see that when you turn the arms inside out, the lining fits perfectly. And depending on what fabric you use, sometimes the arm takes a little bit more effort to pull through. But what I've done here is you can now see that the elastic should naturally fall on the cuff. If it doesn't and it's somewhere up the arm, you can just pull it down right to where that cuff is. And basically you can just line it up so it fits perfectly in your cuff. Just like that. Should look something like that. And basically all around the circumference of all around the diameter. So now all around your cuff, we're going to sew this elastic into place. And the way we're going to do that is we're just going to follow the line that we've already stitched all the way around the cuff. But this time we're going to line up the inside lining, which is this right here. You can do this with your fingers and sort of feel it out. We're going to line that up with the cuff. So now your cuffs should look something a little bit like this. If you've lined up this seam to the same as the inseam there, then you should have a really clean stitch. And obviously you can see the difference there between the cut and fold cuff and the other one, which pretty much look the exact same, to be honest. I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference. The cut and fold maybe just looks a little bit cleaner. We're now basically going to move on to adding the elastic to the waistband. Now this looks a little bit unclean at the moment. That is mainly due to the fact that I messed up the pattern. It won't be the same for when you do it your way. But pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to use this opening, this zip opening, to thread this elastic through. So on the inside, we're going to sew this down to where the block connects to the strip. So we're going to sew this on the inside right there. To make this kind of a little bit easier for you to sew, I didn't do a lot of speaking on that last piece, but all I essentially did was feed that elastic through the sandwiched bottom of the lining and the outer fabric, and then I've just sewn it down on where that square comes in. Yours will be a little bit different, but you'll see that seam and you'll be able to sew the elastic down. So essentially, to make this a little bit easier, you can slowly pull it along, because you'll see that the bottom starts to cinch. So you can slowly pull this whilst you're sewing it and take out the pins as you go. Make sure to follow that stitch mark to clean it up. So now you've just finished doing all of the elastic on the bottom of your jacket, and you've also finished your cuffs. If you've done that, you should pat yourself on the back, because that is quite a tricky thing to do, especially if you are doing it on a domestic machine. These things are kind of easy, but it can be quite tricky and intricate in certain ways. But essentially, now we've done all of the lining and we've finished the elastic, we're going to move on to adding the zip. So where you've sewn down the inside of this collar, you can see that it's naturally now, both of these sides are naturally folding in. And what we're going to do is we're going to just keep that fold consistently following all the way down, and we're just going to pin it in place. Once it's pinned in place, we can slowly remove the pins and place the right side of the zip all the way up, and then the same with the other side. You might want to undo your zip for this. And you just want to insert it so the teeth is kind of hanging out, but you have enough of the side of the zip tape to be able to sew down, and there's enough of a fold so it doesn't just come undone. Let me show you. just like that, you have finished your jacket. I've just sewn all the way down the zip, just finished off the stitching and everything. I'm going to lay it out and show you what you've just created. And that is the finished jacket. It did take me around a day and a little bit to finish. If you started a little bit earlier than me, I started at like 3 p.m, 4 p.m. You'd get this done in a day. There were some parts that I feel like could be a little bit tricky, so I've decided to put this one as a level 3 in my pattern scale. I have to build them first and then be able to gauge the skill level from my sort of brain and how I would sort of deem something to be easier rather than hard. But this is a level 3. The elastic can seem quite daunting, but you've just made your first Harrington jacket, and now you've got the pattern. You can play around with this as much as you want. It's your pattern forever. You have extra small all the way up to large, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you got some value from learning how to make this jacket. It's reversible, so wear it both sides. It's a very casual jacket, and depending on what material you have used, you're able to wear it in any sort of scene. I'm going to probably wear the black lining side in more sort of chill environments, and then bang, pop out the rough cut print when it's time to sort of show out a little bit. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed crafting this, then move on to other projects that I've built. If you're interested in supporting me, then stay tuned and watch the videos. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I hope you understood the process fully. I tried to break it down the best I could. Yeah, pretty much that's it. I'll catch you later.